All right, all right. Welcome back to another episode of the Behind the Back podcast. We are your hosts. I am Marcos Conan Negron, and beside me here, as always, is Ben the Jet Retz. Ben, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, man. How are you?
Doing good. Happy Friday, my guy.
Yeah, happy Friday. Glad to be at the weekend.
Yes, seriously. After another long week, we decided we're going to do a Friday Five. This is our second time doing the Friday Five. And for those who weren't here the last time we did it, it was quite a bit of time ago. Friday Five is where we're going to hammer out 5 topics that we thought were really important and just kind of narrow down, kind of summarize what we thought was important from the week, um, or any news that we might have heard. So we're going to go into it now. But before we do that, for those who are listening on audio and want to see us on video, go ahead and go to YouTube at Behind the Back Podcast. Check out our pretty faces. Give us a like, subscribe, and follow. For those who can only listen to us on audio, that's great. Go ahead and keep listening to us there. We love everyone who goes ahead and listens to us. So with that being said, our first topic on the Friday Five is going to be football related. I'm wearing the Eagles jersey today because it is Eagles related. Jason Kelce retired, and I think that was important to get into because he was one of the most, if not one of the most influential Philadelphia sports athlete over the past half decade or so. I think the reason this was so important, and it makes me sad because I've been an Eagles fan since 2004. I was 9 years old. But when you're that age, I got onto it mainly because of like Madden, and I learned kind of how to play the game through that, how football worked a little bit. As I got older, I was 17 years old, 18 years old in 2012, 2013 season, right around the time Jason Kelce was a rookie. So that new era, that Chip Kelly era of football was kind of the time I really started, engaging in football, to the point where I understood the intricacies and the importance of offensive linemen, defensive linemen, everything that kind of made football tick. And for me, Jason Kelce, I think what makes his retirement so sad is he's probably one of the most relatable people on the planet. And it's hard to find players that embody a city the way that Jason Kelce embodied Philadelphia. And I think it was so sad to me that a player that's only gotten better as he played. He got all of his all pros in his 30s, and very few players are like that where they kind of age like fine wine. So he will be missed and his impact will be felt as the season goes. So it was sad. It was a sad week, and his speech was, heartbreaking and super well written, and it took 41 minutes, and it made me sad. So yeah, that's the big news for that one.
Yeah, and all the respect in the world, he had a great career, and he was, the center for a lot of great Eagles teams. So shout out to him. What a great career that. Yeah, I watched the full little interview that he did, and it was just it was emotional for sure.
Yeah.
There's so much passion behind the Kelce brothers, but especially with Jason, like he's so passionate. He's a passionate human being, and you can kind of see there's a lot of care behind everything that he says. He thinks about the words that he says, and there was a lot of thought put into that whole thing, and it was beautiful.
Yeah.
Shout out to him.
Shout out. And I checked out the New Heights podcast where he kind of broke it down a little bit more, and Travis was crying. He's like, dude, football's going to feel empty without you. I was like, this is tough, dude. And it was great kind of knowing that he knew that he couldn't play up to the level he wanted to anymore. And
Yeah.
that's how he knew it was time. And again, one of the greatest players I will have ever seen, especially at his position. The offensive linemen are always so underrated, and the fact that he's gotten as much praise and success as he had, what he means to the city, bringing us our only championship, and that's something we won't ever forget with him. So
Definitely.
all right, next topic, we're going to go on to the first Kings game of the week, which was against the Bulls. We talked about this going into it. They needed to start this week off strong if they wanted to ascend in the playoff standings. And what did they do? They started off great. Did a great job in the first quarter, kind of set the tone, and kind of fell apart again in the second quarter, and had a nice third quarter before blowing it all up. We blew multiple double-digit leads in this one where it kind of felt like we were in control for most of the game until we weren't. So what did you see from this game?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of laid it out. It was a hot start, and they got comfortable in that lead that they had established early on. And this is something that we've seen this team do all season long. Like if there's one area they are consistent, it's blowing these leads. There's something about getting up by between a 15 to 20 point lead with this team, with this Kings team, that they just I don't know if they hit cruise control. I don't know where the mentality goes. I don't know, and it kind of not kind of it starts with the coaching staff in my opinion, and it goes down to the players. Like I'm seeing a lack of um respect for a lead and for your opponent when it comes to this team. And that's frustrating because we still haven't earned that respect. You haven't won a playoff series in over 16 years. Like, yeah, we made it to the playoffs last year. We lost that series. You proved to a lot of people and a lot of teams that you can get there and you can make an impact and make some noise, but you didn't win. So
Yeah.
it's you got to still show that respect to your opponents, to the game, and show it to yourself. Show that you can finish a game with a 20-point lead after starting it with a 15. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's a frustrating thing that we're seeing consistently with this team. Unfortunately, they had a rough fourth quarter. They let the Bulls put up 36 on their head after the Kings had put up 36 in the first quarter. And if you ask me and you ask most people, I'd rather end a game strong like the Bulls did than start a game strong. And that's something that unfortunately this team struggles to do at times. So when you turn the ball over 17 times, um, you're not setting a good recipe for yourself to win that game.
Agreed. And frustrating as it was, and like especially after a great win in Minnesota, we kind of thought that was going to be the game that kind of set the tone for the week after their players only meeting. And there was good moments in this game, and again, I think it was just a level of complacency that, and this happens at home a lot. We're noticing a lot of these leads we're blowing are at home, and that's kind of at as a fan, it's kind of getting to the point now where we're like, do we kind of expect this every night now? Like there's never a lead that's safe. So it was definitely kind of annoying to see that that was the result that was given. And Keon Ellis didn't play a single minute in this game, and I thought he would have been extremely valuable against a guy like Kobe White, who lit us up the whole time. And I thought that it was again frustrating. And Mike Brown was trying to figure out his rotations, and yeah, it was a disappointing loss, especially because it just felt like we had it the whole time until we didn't. And that's not the first time against this particular Bulls team that we struggled against them.
Yeah, agreed. And on top of that too, just to kind of wrap it all up, we didn't get a great game out of our star players. Domas finished with 21 rebounds, which is awesome, right? Like, don't get me wrong there. It was 18 points, 21 rebounds, but he missed a lot of bunnies in that game, bunnies being layups. He missed a lot of opportunities to take a smaller player down to the post with him. Like, it was just kind of a lack of I guess understanding the situation at times with him, and I'm not sure what it was, but it just didn't get that production out of him. And then Foxy ending with 20 and 10, again, not a terrible stat line, but in a game at this point in the season, you gotta expect a little bit more out of your star players, and they had after this game they had some good games. So I say let's transition out of this and let's talk about the next game.
Yes. So the next game was kind of the game that we talked about, or at least I mentioned in our last pod, that was kind of one of the most important one of the week because of the standings. It was against the Los Angeles Lakers at Crypto.com Arena. And, you know, as you mentioned just recently in the last segment there, you pointed out that you'd rather finish strong than start off strong. And I think the Kings took that to heart a little bit by giving us a scary start, being down. What was it? It was like 30-13 early or something like that. Um, they were
Yeah, they
down.
were
No,
down at 19 at one point,
yeah,
right?
exactly. So they were down as much as 19 before roaring back, and just they ended up after the first quarter. During the second, to go into the first half, they were up 15. So they went from being down 19 to up 15 in a whole quarter and a half, and that's just that came from De'Aaron Fox just having his way with this team like he usually does. And it's the Kings in general have had their way with the Lakers, and it's not just De'Aaron who was cooking. Domas had a really physical, good game against a supposedly better big in Anthony Davis, and it was a narrative going in. Domas has yet to lose to Anthony Davis, and he showed everybody why. Anthony Davis just looked like a totally different player. He was flailing around. He was complaining. It didn't seem like he wanted to get where he wanted to go. A lot of it, they basically took Anthony Davis out of the game, and it was evident once LeBron went out of the game because he left with about 4.5 minutes left with an injury, and he was cooking us this game. And him and Rui were kind of the main things. Even though Rui felt like the quietest, 29 points. So like I didn't even
Yeah.
notice he was in the game. Um, I was happy with the win because of Foxy, and this momentum really started to shift once we got Davion and Keon on the floor at the same time. Davion went 4 for 4. He's been shooting pretty well since the Minnesota game, and Keon and him kind of turned the tides defensively and brought us that energy. What did you see from this game that really stood out to you?
I saw our stars show out like they're supposed to. Domas with a dominating triple double, 16 points, 12 assists, and 20 rebounds, and then Foxy finishing with that 44 points. But to be honest with you, I was the most thrilled to see Malik Monk put up 26 and just kind of take it to his old team. Those it's hilarious when I go on social media and I see these highlights of Monk throughout just his career being in Sacramento, since being in Sacramento. And all these Lakers fans are like, I can't believe we let him go. I can't believe we let him go. And it feels so good when the Sacramento Kings have been so dominating against the Lakers in the Sabonis and Fox era, and also with Monk. Like Monk has only lost to the Lakers one time.
Yeah,
And in that game, he still had like 30 something points. Like you can trust at this point that there are two guys on the Sacramento Kings whenever they play the Lakers that will show up. And that's De'Aaron Fox and Malik Monk. Because each time that those two have played the Lakers, they have just dominated the game. So it was really good to see. And it was a good bounce back off of just a frustrating loss against the Bulls, But one thing for sure, like once the Kings came back into this game against the Lakers, they gained that lead and they really didn't look back. Like they were up by close to 20 for a lot of the game. And
yeah,
then LeBron single-handedly, I mean, he's still one of the GOATs, right? He single-handedly brought the Lakers back to within, I think it was about 12 points.
yeah.
And at that point, there was a little bit of, not a little, there was a shift in momentum and you could feel it, you could sense it through the TV screen, like in the arena, there was something going on. And then the Kings, they took a timeout, they came back onto the court and like immediately 3-pointer, and then they got a turnover, and then it was a bucket, and it was just they took full control of the game again. And that was something that I think we as Kings fans last year, we saw Mike Brown take a lot of timeouts quickly after mistakes. This year, you don't see Mike Brown take those quick timeouts like he was.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's letting them play through a lot more than we're used to them playing through. And I think that's probably, bit us in the butt a little more than it has helped us. Obviously, there's growth in doing that, but
Yeah,
it's hard at times when you let a game get away from you because you're just trying to view it as a learning lesson, and you've done that time in and time out. Like, so
yeah.
it was just good to see Mike take the time out when he did, and then those guys to come out and just take full control of that game again. It was a
Agreed.
good win.
Agreed. It was definitely a much better Mike Brown game. I agree with you in that sentiment. And people were roasting Darvin Ham too. They're like, they didn't. He let, like Ben mentioned, Mike Brown has a tendency of letting the Kings kind of trying to learn from their mistakes. And he mentioned that it was because, you know, he was asked about this kind of thing, and he mentioned that it was just because, you know, last year it was okay for him because it was new. Everything's new. He's trying to implement his system, but after a while, the same voice gets stale. So he needs to try to convey the message and let these guys learn. De'Aaron and Domas need to learn how to handle these situations. So it was definitely, I liked the way he handled this game. Never didn't let the Lakers get too close while Darvin Ham was letting us score 22 unanswered with it before calling a timeout. So and that's the price of having LeBron on your team. You think that, he'll handle all the problems, and that bites them in the butt all the time. So
Yeah, well, another team that's leaned on their star player for a majority of the game, or majority of the season, but it hasn't necessarily worked out for them, is the San Antonio Spurs. And the
mhm.
Spurs came to town last night without their star player, which is a recipe for disaster if you are the
Scary.
Sacramento Kings. There's an unfortunate stat that I think Marcos and I will probably bring up at some point. Maybe not today because we're not
Mm,
ready to.
nah, we'll
But
see.
we'll see. We'll see where it goes. But San Antonio Spurs came to sack, and the story of this game is pretty frustrating, to be honest. The Kings did get the win, but it was a shaky win with a lot of questions coming out of it. And it's the same questions that we've been asking, but with a little more emphasis. So the Kings started about like normal. They finished with the first quarter with 30 points, and the Spurs had 31. So it's a normal game, except you're letting a team who isn't good without their star player put up 31 on your head in one quarter.
Yeah.
So that was a little frustrating. Um, and then the Kings came out in the second quarter and dominated. They had a 41-point second quarter and took control of this game. Now, at that point, you look at who's on the other side of the ball with the Spurs, and you're like, okay, I think we're safe. I think we're okay. Like they don't have Wemby. They have guys that we can defend 1 through 5. We should be good, right? That was the feeling at halftime. No. So the Spurs come out and they gain about 7-point traction on us to cut the lead to, I think it was just under 10. Um, and then the Spurs then dominated the fourth to start early. And
Yeah.
it was scary because at one point we went down by 8, right?
With just under 5 minutes left.
And what happened from there?
So at that point, the momentum just felt like, oh my God, we're going to lose to the Spurs team. And Devin Vassell had done a great job cooking Keegan all night. This was kind of a bad Keegan game.
Yeah.
And the back-to-back, my thinking with this game was they were banking on the fact that they could beat the Spurs with their offense and hardly play any defense, because the defense they played versus the Lakers, even though they only allowed 9 less points, was way more physical and just kind of the presence was all there. But yeah, in those last 5 minutes, it was scary, and it came down to De'Aaron making a couple buckets, but they were also turning the ball over a ton. And again, I think Mike Brown's kind of found his rotation in this game with Davion and Keon kind of coming off the bench and supplying more minutes in the kind of those Kevin Huerter minutes. And I think it's paying dividends having both energy guys on the floor, and they're both hitting shots. So it was huge in this game to have them. And we were trying to play physical, but the Spurs were doing a really good job just responding. And this is kind of a bad game referee wise. There was a lot of bad calls and missed calls. The energy, the vibe was just kind of terrible. But once the Kings started going down again, we cut it down to as close as 2 points, and then they went up 5 again, and then we got down to 3, and Foxy fouled out with 50 seconds to go. And the crowd, the arena kind of felt like, oh man, we're going to lose this game. And they kind of pulled the Philadelphia Eagles fans where they're booing on the home court. Like they're letting them know. And Malik said after the game, he's like, once I heard the boos, he's like, I gotta shut this up. I gotta change this, turn this around. Once Foxy went out, Mike Brown kind of challenged the call to, a last hurrah, saying, I'm going to, defend my superstar and hopefully maybe we get lucky, but it didn't work. So once Fox went out, HB responded, got us a bucket. We went down, got a good stop. Malik comes out in transition and hits a 3 to tie it. And then I'm trying to think exactly what happened here because I think they scored another bucket. And then I forget, we scored one more.
So
Yeah, I
the
forgot at
Malik
that point.
3,
Yeah.
Malik 3 made it a tie game.
Tie game, yeah.
That was a tie game.
It was right after
with
that part then. Okay.
Yeah, with
Yeah.
20 seconds left or like 23 seconds left or something.
Mhm.
And then the Spurs come down the court and Greg Popovich actually sold this play for the Spurs because he was on the sideline and he's motioning his center like with his entire body, with everything he had left in his 70 whatever year old frame, like everything he had, telling his center to go up and go get the ball. And so Domas saw that, read that, came up and stole the ball on that takeaway and on that pass. And it was a fast break all the way down. Domas puts us up by 2. And then the Spurs come back on the other side and they couldn't make a 3, and then they couldn't make a putback, and the Kings win the game. So
yeah,
it was rocky as hell to end that game. But this was another instance of it's March, you're approaching the end of the season. You need to be able to lean on your stars. And one of our stars in Domas, he followed through at the end of the game there
Mm-hmm.
because, I mean, Foxy wasn't on the court for the last minute, but Domas was still a major factor. So awesome to see. One thing, too, I want to point out in these last 3 games that we talked about, our free throws have been awesome. So
Much better.
in this game, we shot 17 of 18 from the free throw line. In the game against the Lakers, we were, bear with me, 21 of 25. 10 of 12
Mm-hmm.
from the free throw line. So
Which is
that was
such
a good
a
one too.
only 12
It's
free
it's
throws.
low compared to the Lakers who had 25 free throws. Like it makes sense though, you know.
Yeah.
And then we shot 16 to 18 from the free throw line against the Bulls. So that's three games in a row now. You strung together basically 80% and above free throw percentage, which that points to a winning recipe, especially
Yeah.
if you play the game you did last night. I don't know if you realize this. This is the last point on this. Is the Kings had 76 points in the paint,
Oh yeah.
and
They were just taking it to him.
that's the kind of game that the Kings were playing last year. It was work the inside and then kick out.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have the inside, you take it. And that's something that we haven't seen. This team has been living and dying by the 3 ball all season long. And I mean, yeah, we have a winning record, but we're not in a winning spot. So
Yeah.
I kind of want to argue that we've been dying by it.
No, it's a great point. And like you mentioned, we were attacking the paint, and that was the same way in the Lakers game too. We were attacking the paint. So we did a really good job. And again, a win is a win. I was happy with at least we were able to close it out. I'll take it. It was a back-to-back. That's another one. So that was a huge way to finish the rest of the week. And now we have Houston on Sunday. So the last topic we want to talk about here to finish things off is kind of just the playoff seedings, touching up on everything. And I kind of have kind of a way to give the Kings fans hope a little bit. So to start, we're still in the 7th seed, but we did a good job separating because Dallas won against Miami the other night, but they had lost 3 in a row previously. So now we're the same. We're 1.5 games back from 5th, and we're 1.5 games back from 8th. So we did a good job kind of putting ourselves in the middle. We're a half game behind Phoenix. So if they lose tomorrow, we could be ahead of them. So it's going to be an ever-changing thing. And they also have the next 2 out of their 3 games are against Boston, and one of them a Cleveland game sandwiched in between. So there's a very good chance that we're going to jump up in the standings even without having to play. So one thing I wanted to point out is although the Kings struggle against not so great teams, we've lost to 4 out of the 5 worst teams in the league, and it would have been 5 had we choked it off in against San Antonio. But one thing the Kings have actually been really solid on is beating the teams in the top 4. So they did a ranking of the Athletic. There was an article in the Athletic stating for all the 5th through 10th seed, all the teams in those seeds, and their record versus top 10, the top 4. And the Kings actually have the best record of that group. We're 8-5 versus the top 4 teams with 2 games remaining against the Clippers and the Thunder. So in second place is the Lakers. They're 7-6, and they're the 10th seed, obviously, with 2 games against Minnesota left. Pelicans are the 5th seed, but they're third in this ranking. They're 6-6 versus the top 4, and they also have the Clippers and the Thunder remaining. Then the Suns are the 4th in this ranking, but their record gets way worse. They're 2-5, and they have 6 games remaining against these top 4 teams. And so they have 2 games versus Minnesota, 2 versus the Clippers, 1 versus OKC, and 1 versus Denver. They still have that remaining on top of the 3 games I mentioned earlier. There's a very good chance that Phoenix slides down this ranking a little bit. They play a very tough schedule. I think they have the toughest remaining schedule in the league. So with Devin Booker hurt, and he might be coming back, but how long? And if he comes back, then who gets hurt after? That's been their issue. So there's a very good chance for them. And then in 5th is the Dallas Mavericks, who are right behind us. They're 3-8 with their record, and then they have 3 games remaining, 2 versus OKC and 1 versus Denver. So there's also opportunity for them to slide back a bit. And then the Warriors are the worst ones of the bunch, even though they've been streaking lately and they've been up and down as well. But they're 2-12 versus the top 4 teams, and they have 1 game remaining against the Wolves. So they've played the tougher teams, earlier on in the season. But that's been their issue. And for us, we've stayed above, we've kept our heads above water because we've beaten these good teams, although we've had some annoyingly painful losses to some of these bad teams. So it makes me confident for the playoffs because this team, and we watched it against the Lakers game, Fox in general loves playing elite superstars. Like he sees LeBron, oh, he's like, I'm going to chirp it up. I'm going to challenge him. I'm going to go at this team all day. And we've seen it every time he plays LeBron, every time he plays Phoenix, when they play the Warriors. Like when Foxy plays, or like Dallas too, when you play the superstars, he's always up for the challenge. And we watch against like the Bulls and the Spurs kind of play down to the competition a little bit. So if we snag a top 6 seeds, fans don't give up hope. Like we're going to be in a really good spot here because I'm confident that our guys will step up to the moment because they realize the moment. It's just frustrating having to take some of these losses now.
Yeah, and I mean the Kings are less likely to blow a lead on the opponent's court versus on ours. So, not having home court advantage might work out to our favor.
Seriously, I agree. It's weird. We're going to be in a flip-flop position even if the Pelicans continue to rise. I'm okay with being the 6th seed. The Thunder are a half game from third. There's a real opportunity that could be the first round matchup, and there's a real good chance we could take that. That would be a matchup. I don't know if we'd be favored technically, but for those who have watched our matchups during the season would kind of think, oh, this might be a matchup that we could actually exploit. Like Chet gave up 31 rebounds to Yusuf Nurkic, and Domas has owned him every single time. So it's like that's a nasty matchup for them to have to go into playoff series in.
Yeah, exactly. And now this team does have some playoff experience, and kind of going off what you said, they show up against the good teams. It's playing to your opponent's level, which is something this team does really well. And it's unfortunate because there's actually more bad teams than there are better teams. Worse teams than there are better teams than the Kings right now, and that's just on paper.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's just a couple like notable injuries. You mentioned Devin Booker; he's out. I think he is coming back soon for the Suns. Paul George, I believe, is still out for the Clippers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think his table is opening up. I think he's got maybe a week or two left until he's back.
And then how long until he's out again, or Kawhi's out again?
Or
Russ fractured his
Kawhi,
hand,
right?
so
So bad injuries there. Karl Anthony Towns tore his meniscus, and so he had surgery. He should be back. They said if everything goes well and his recovery is great, he should be back for the early playoff series.
yeah,
So
it said like a
first
month,
round,
but even then, it's like you just took a full break off of this, and then you're gonna try
right?
and come back and play playoff basketball. Like, good luck, my dude. Like, whoever plays them first is gonna have a real chance,
Yeah,
whoever
for
it is.
sure. And I think Steph went down with a hand injury last night too.
Oh,
So,
ankle injury, but
or was
yes.
it ankle? Yeah.
But they said he was
So
cleared, so he's gonna avoid missing extended time. But for them, missing any time with Steph, that's worrisome.
yeah, for sure.
So we were dealing with injuries early on and kind of a little bit as the season's gone on, but I think we've been relatively healthy this year. And I think now we're watching the Davion Keon minutes. I think Mike Brown's kind of figured out his bench a little bit. I think we're kind of figuring it out with Malik, Keon, Davion, Len, and Trey, just kind of mixing them all in there and getting them the minutes needed to kind of make up for the disappearance of HB and Kevin sometimes. So I don't know,
It
man.
only took Mike 62 games to figure it out, but
Yeah, I know. I agree.
I love Mike.
He could have figured it out 20 games ago, but
Right.
it's fine. But we'll see how this goes moving forward. We got Houston, and then we got another date with the Lakers, so we know we're going to show up to that one hopefully and sweep the season because we haven't lost to them yet, have we? So I don't know. Yeah, because
No.
he hasn't beaten Davis yet. So Davis hasn't beaten Sabonis yet. So yeah, so we could sweep the Lakers. It's weird to think that we've won 7 of our last games against the Lakers, which is wild. So
Yeah.
that
We
rivalry's kind of flipped.
right. And we kind of touched on it last week. Final point is there's still a promising schedule for this Kings team coming up. Like just looking at all the teams, the hardest team that we're going to play until that Lakers game is the Bucks, and that's just because it's on the other side and Giannis and Dame, and if I think back at our last date with them, if we just knocked down our free throws, I said it last week, knock down our free throws, you wouldn't have had to worry about Damian Lillard hitting a game winner on your head. So
Correct.
favorable schedule. It's time to freaking take some advantage, man. we need this team to start showing some consistency, because if you're not showing it at least at the end of March going into April, like, you don't even know what to expect for playoffs.
Exactly. So we'll touch on it more next week as we break down a little bit more. So yeah, with that being said, this was volume 2 of the Friday 5 for the Behind the Back podcast. You can hit us up at behindthebackpod13@gmail.com. Hit us up on any of our social medias, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, X, Facebook, all that fun stuff. Follow us on YouTube, give us a like, subscribe, leave a comment below how you guys think the playoff race is going to continue. Do you guys think the Kings have a real chance, or are we just fooling ourselves? Let us know, even though we already know we're fooling ourselves. So with that, I'm Marcos Conegron, and beside me here, as always, is
The Jet.
Yes, sir. I hope you have a good weekend, my dude. We'll see. We'll get in here next week and see what happens.
Yes, sir. You too.
All right. Peace.
Peace.